Hey there, superstar. Let's talk about how to increase retention and keep coaching clients for life. First, I'm going to dive into why it's so powerful to keep clients for life. And it's not just the obvious things. Then I'm going to talk about what it takes to have clients stay on longer. And then finally, I'm going to dive into all the different things that I recommend you do in order to keep your program alive and valuable and compelling for people over many, many years. Let's go. So I don't know about you, but I do not like launches. I do not love marketing and selling all the time. I would prefer to relax in my business. I do prefer to relax in my business. And when I realized early on, when I first started my group coaching program, I wasn't retaining clients. I wasn't retaining clients at the beginning. We would get to the end of that year, and save for one particular story, which I'll tell you in a minute, I had most of my clients would complete. They would do the year and they were happy. They weren't upset. They didn't feel like they wasted their money, thank goodness. They got value, but they didn't stay. They didn't keep going. And it was really exhausting to constantly be refilling the program just to stay at the same level, much less grow. So I got really clear early on, like, I need to figure out how to keep my clients longer if I want to have a business that's joyful, fulfilling, relaxing, and not super stressful. Not to mention, it's also cheaper to keep a client than to have to go and find a new one. We all know this. The research bears it out. So what is the key to retention? Well, there are a few things. There are a few things that I've identified and that I focus on and that we're going to talk about in this video. The first is to actually focus on retention more than driving new business. Now, that can seem obvious, but the truth is what tends to happen is if we're losing clients over here, we tend to focus on getting new clients over here. And I would say it takes a complete reframe to value those existing clients, even if they're problematic, or even if they're struggling, or even if they're, not working out very well, to focus on why, to focus on understanding why this person is not a right fit, why they're not sticking around, what is it that they're not getting. And I'm not saying that necessarily so that you try to save that client, but rather so that you create more systemic change in the whole business that would prevent that situation in the first place. What do I mean by that? It means that when you take your focus, and I know this is hard, away from landing new business and take it over to focus on retention and serving your existing clients, it means you go deep with asking the difficult questions, which can be really confronting and challenging. But it looks like, for example, at addressing their expectations. It looks like asking them, what is it that you wanted that you're not getting? Like, what is serving you? What is not serving you? Like, really looking at your existing clients so that you can then optimize when you are marketing for new clients. So one of the things, for example, that I found was as clients were leaving, a lot of times they weren't the right fit. And what I realized was I was getting clients who were very early stage in their businesses, and I really wanted to work with, and I had better results working with clients who were later stage in their business. The ones that were the happiest were the people that were the most established. They were already out of survival mode and they were into comfort mode. They were feeling good, but they wanted more. They wanted more excitement. They wanted more creativity, new strategies. They wanted to launch new things, and they had a good foundation to work from. What I found is that the clients that weren't working out and that weren't sticking around were the ones that were in their first or second year, and they were in that kind of survival mode. So by really focusing in on my clients, on who is working, who is not working out, and asking the difficult questions, I was able to understand how to shift my marketing for new clients in order to have more ideal fit clients. So that's just my story, but that's my recommendation for you is we want to change our focus from just getting new business to really serving the business we already have fully. Even if we discover that they're really not a great fit, serving them the very, very best we can. The second thing that I recommend focusing on is your own leadership. Now, this can be one of the hardest things to do in your business. I'll never forget being on the phone with a client who was completing, didn't want to continue. I was in Aspen, Colorado. It was supposed to be a fun weekend vacation, and instead I was on the phone with this client who was explaining to me all the ways that I disappointed her, all the ways that it wasn't working out from her perspective. And I instead of blaming her and making her wrong and being like, well, she's a, you know what, I listened and I took it in and I took her feedback. One of her pieces of feedback, just to give you an idea, was that when she enrolled, she thought that we would be closer. She thought we'd have a closer connection, and instead she felt like I kept her at arm's length. Now, I'm not saying she's right or wrong, but I am saying there was an unmet expectation there. And that's on me, not on her. And that's another thing that I'm not going to dive deeply into this video, but in terms of your own leadership and your own development, one of the biggest tips that I can give you that's taken me years and years to learn is that it's way more empowering and you have way more agency when you take on responsibility for all of it. So instead of blaming the client, being like, well, she shouldn't have had that expectation. Who does she think she is? Who does she think I am, right? Because I could have gone down that route. Instead to say, okay, how did I create that? How did I contribute to that? How is that on me? And I totally recommend applying this lens to everything in your business. Not because everything is your fault, right? I understand that things happen and there are things that are out of our control. And when we live from an empowered place and we take responsibility for all of it, it creates a really different experience of business and leadership. So that's the other thing I would recommend, is really focusing on your own leadership development and opening yourself up to feedback from clients. Now, that doesn't mean that you're in front of a group of your whole clients and it's a free-for-all that you didn't ask for. You want to have some structure and some control about how it happens. So one of the things that we do and that I recommend is we solicit feedback on a regular basis from our clients. We do that through surveys. So we send out a jot form, usually about once a year, that asks people all manner of questions, even some really difficult ones, like what did you want that you're not getting? What expectations have you had that haven't been met, right? So we've asked questions, which, by the way, my stomach turns a little bit before I read these responses. I get nervous. And that's part of leadership. That's part of the development, is not to turn a blind eye to these things and pretend that they don't exist, because they always exist and they fester when they're not addressed. Now, before I dive into a few more ways to retain clients longer, I want to invite you to like this video, subscribe to my channel, maybe even post a comment below about your experience with client retention. Most of us think about, what can I add to my program to make it more effective, to make it more juicy, make it more compelling? But what I would invite you to do, definitely before you add anything, is trim it down. You may be surprised to learn that the number one reason people leave coaching programs is because they're not taking advantage of everything in the program. They feel like it's too much and it's a waste of money if they're not using everything. So number one, I would recommend trimming it down, doing that survey, find out what people are not using and let it go. Always give yourself room in your contract and your agreements to take things out and to add things in, right? Because what I see a lot of times is coaches add, and they never remove, and they end up with a really bloated program. Now, I'm not going to lie. The truth is, my program is very robust, and there are things that some people don't use. But here's what I do, and this is what you can do if you know that you have a diverse group of people. You position it as a buffet. Say, hey, here's the program, but what I really want you to know is you're not expected. Nobody uses every piece of this. It's meant to be to use what you want. And the focus is really on the outcome that you're getting and on whatever the most important part of the program is. Like, for example, in our program, the most important piece of the program is the weekly call and the group gatherings, what we call family vacation. Those are the two most important things. That's what I really want people to dive into. And everything else is sort of like, support. And the program itself is worth it if they can just do those two things. Another thing that really matters in retention, and this is going to seem totally counterintuitive, I get it, and it's the truth. And that is to maintain equanimity, which means, you may have heard me use this word before, you are all in committed to serving your clients and retaining them. Like that is a primary focus. You invest energy in it. You love on your clients. You serve them the best you can because you want to retain them and because you want to serve them, obviously. And at the same time, that you hold it lightly, that you let it go. And that's because what can happen is when we grab on too tightly to people, to clients, to lovers, to friends, to parents, whatever it is, people tend to pull away. There's just this natural thing that when we try to hold on too tightly, that thing starts to want to wriggle away. It happens with my puppy, who's back there, by the way. When I grab onto him and I hold him, he starts to wiggle and shake and he wants to get away from mama. When I'm chill and I'm relaxed and I'm doing my own thing, what does he do? He comes up and he sits next to me and he'll stay there for an hour or more. And so that's the same thing with clients. Like we don't want to hold on to them too tightly. We don't want to put that kind of pressure on them too. They can feel it, even if you never say it. And so one of the tricks, the keys, the strategies for hanging on to clients is not to hold on too tightly, to trust that if and when it's time for them to leave, it's okay. You didn't fail. This is part of life. Is some clients are with us for a reason, for a season, or a lifetime. And we don't want to force people to all be lifetime clients. And when we do that, when we let go, we're more likely to actually have clients for life. And then the last thing I want to say is that what really shifted in my business in retaining clients was that I stopped making the investment and the program about me and about our one-on-one relationship. I reorganized my marketing, my language, my structure of the program to focus more on building a community or a culture rather than me being the source of all their needs, like the solution to all their needs. Like they had to come to me. And so that was challenging, first of all, because it created a little bit of an energetic resistance and resentment where I was like, I don't want to be your everything, right? So that created that same dynamic of like a little bit of distance. And also it felt like pressure to me. And so what I did instead was over the years, I started focusing more on the culture and the community and the value of the people in it and of the program rather than the value of just me and our one-on-one relationship. So that's another thing that I highly recommend. Now, if you're looking to create a group of your own, if you'd like to know how to create a culture that lasts and that retains clients for years and years, then let's connect. My website that you can go to find a time to connect with me is superstaractivator.com/go.